guards from Blackwater. Tonight, though, breaking news in our fifth story in the countdown. Assistant FBI Director John Miller having issued a statement this evening reading, "To avoid even the appearance of any conflict, the FBI team deployed from Washington to assist the State Department in the events of September 16th will have any additional security needs provided by U.S. government personnel." Nobody's saying additional to what. The presumption is no Blackwater guards trailing along as the FBI investigates alleged Blackwater murders. But that is not made explicit in the statement. The New York Daily News having unveiled the FBI's original security arrangements in today's editions, the Bureau acknowledging that its agents sent previously into Iraq were protected outside Baghdad's Green Zone by Blackwater operatives. The State Department, whose employees are also protected by Blackwater in Iraq, apparently having no such qualms about the duplicity. The website TPM Muckraker having reported Monday that the State Department's initial report into last month's incident in which Blackwater guards were accused of killing Iraqi civilians was written by a Blackwater contractor. Other news organizations have since confirmed that. The death toll for that incident now up to 17, according to the New York Times today, far higher than previously thought. At yesterday's Blackwater hearings on Capitol Hill, the House Oversight Committee asked by the Justice Department not to question Blackwater Chair Eric Prince about the September 16th killings, a request with which the lawmakers complied. Republican Darrell Issa of California citing Blackwater's mission to protect even the members of the Oversight Committee as reason enough for the congressional investigation to be, well, dismissed.
Blackwater is just easier to attack directly by members of Congress than would be our men and women in uniform.
Well, let's go back to Blackwater because you and others wrote a letter to the chairman asking him to postpone this hearing.
To let the process go forward the way it's supposed to. We're supposed to allow the administration to do its investigation, and then we do oversight. We're not investigators. If Henry Waxman today wants to go to Iraq and do an investigation, Blackwater will be his support team, his protection team. Do you think he really wants to investigate directly?
We'll skip for the moment one member of the California congressional delegation indirectly referencing a threat to the life of a second member of the same congressional delegation, and note instead that on the campaign trail in New Hampshire this afternoon, Senator John Edwards announcing a plan that would end the current system of outsourcing security missions in large part to private contractors and return those duties to military command. Senator Edwards joining us now from Boston. Senator, thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Given how stretched the U.S. military already is because of Iraq, if men and women in uniform are going to take over the Blackwater missions and the other private contractor missions there in Iraq, does that mean, as you suggested today, that the drawdown of current force levels is an inherent part to your proposal?
It's absolutely a crucial part of the proposal. The answer to this is to get American troops out of Iraq, which is why I'm committed to getting our combat troops out of Iraq, stopping combat missions, doing it the right way. But these things that are going on with Blackwater, they worry all Americans. I hear it everywhere I go. You know, people wonder, first of all, why a company whose executives gave hundreds of thousands of dollars to Bush and to Republicans are getting these no-bid contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. There's something wrong with this picture. And then on top of that, why are they usurping what the American voluntary military normally does in providing security? I mean, it doesn't make any sense. It's got to stop, and I will stop it as president.
As I just reported tonight, we're learning that the FBI agents who were heading to Iraq this week to investigate Blackwater were indeed to be protected by operatives from Blackwater, but somebody there said, well, that's probably not a good idea. We'll leave it to U.S. military personnel, although that's still a little vague in terms of who's going to be doing that. But yesterday we had this news about the State Department's initial report on the incident being written by a Blackwater contractor. What is in your proposal to prevent that kind of a snake eating its own tail scenario, and what's in your proposal to keep the government from employing what amounts to a paramilitary organization like Blackwater?
Snake eating its own tail. I love that description.
That's what it is, isn't it?
That's exactly what it is. I hadn't heard that description, though. I love it. What we need to do is we need to have a system in place that ensures, number one, that this cronyism is eliminated, that ensures, number two, that only in the rarest of circumstances are private contractors doing something that the voluntary U.S. military ought to be doing. And we need, to the extent that they are, in fact, private firms, there are private firms providing some level of services, and that should only happen rarely, if at all. But if it happens, they need to be in the military chain of command, responsible and held accountable to the military chain of command.
So you would actually have Blackwater representatives or whatever the company is responsible to local commanders in Baghdad or wherever they might be deployed?
Yeah, but I don't want them there at all. Let me be really clear about this. I think it's only in really exceptional circumstances that they ought to be used at all. I think they need to be out of Iraq. I think that's the real answer. But to the extent in the short term it's necessary to have them there in a small way, they need to be accountable and responsible both legally and militarily to our chain of command.
On the point of the no-bid contracts and the whole financial aspect of this, whether it's Iraq or Katrina, whatever the issue, does it seem to you that the current administration believes all problems should be outsourced to private contractors, that their mistakes are almost intended as a revenue stream for their cronies and their contributors?
Oh, it's absolutely clear. I mean, you've seen it over and over and over with Halliburton and others in Iraq. You've seen the same problem in the aftermath of Katrina in New Orleans. Instead of allowing the people of New Orleans, which is what should have been done, to rebuild their own city, and by the way, we don't need a surge in Baghdad. We need a surge in New Orleans. We need to help the people of New Orleans rebuild their own city. But that job should not be outsourced to Halliburton and other multinational corporations. It ought to be done by the people of New Orleans who are given a decent job, paid a good wage, a prevailing wage, getting health care coverage, having pension protection, and then being able to rebuild their own city that they love so much.
Senator, in your speech today in New Hampshire, you also questioned the stance about the Iraq War of your chief rival for this nomination, Senator Clinton, for having refused to pledge to end all combat operations in Iraq. The Clinton campaign has taken to dismissing your criticism of their candidate as acts of political desperation. How do you respond to that?
Voters have choices. You know, we have choices between the Democrat and the Republican, and we have choices between the Democrats. Listen, I respect Senator Clinton, but we disagree about this. I think if you're going to continue combat missions in Iraq, that is a form of war. And I think the war needs to be ended. I think the combat missions need to be stopped. I think our combat troops ought to be out of Iraq. So there's a very clear choice for Democratic voters. One candidate, Senator Clinton, will continue combat missions. She said that repeatedly now. I will end combat missions. If the Democratic voters want a candidate for president who wants to continue combat missions, they should vote for her. If, on the other hand, they want this war actually ended, they should vote for me. And in fall of next year, when I'm on the stage with Romney or Giuliani or McCain or whoever survives the Republican process, I want the debate to be from me ending the war, from them continuing the war, as opposed to less war versus more war. We need to be more than just a little better than the Republicans, and I think we need to give Americans clear choices.
Practically, sir, in this latest Washington Post ABC News poll, Senator Clinton in that poll has opened up a 33-point lead on Senator Obama and 40 percentage points ahead of you. It's obvious a majority of Americans, a significant majority of Americans, wants us out of Iraq. You've taken responsibility for your vote authorizing the use of force in Iraq. Is that, in your estimation, not resonating, or what? How do you explain Senator Clinton's lead in these polls growing at this point?
Oh, I think this is all very superficial. I mean, I just came from New Hampshire. You see polls in Iowa, we're basically in a dead heat. Senator Obama, Senator Clinton, myself, we're all basically tied in Iowa. In New Hampshire, she has some lead. But what I know from having just been in New Hampshire is between 80 and 90% of New Hampshire voters have not committed to any candidate. They're just starting to look at the race, which is exactly what's happening in most of America. And what you remember at this point in 2003, because I was running in 2003, Governor Dean had a huge lead, and he had a lead in Iowa, he had a lead in New Hampshire, had a big lead nationally, and he did not win, obviously. So what we need to do is continue to make clear to voters that they have choices. They have a different choice between me and Senator Clinton on Iraq. They have a different choice on Iran. I mean, I listened to Senator Clinton's explanation for voting for a Senate resolution that declared the Iranian Revolutionary Guard a terrorist organization, which to me is the equivalent of giving George Bush the authority of the first step to go to war in Iran. I'm against that. And there's another choice that voters have, and we want voters to know what those choices are. It doesn't mean Senator Clinton's not a good person. It just means that we have different views, and voters are entitled to know that.
Democratic presidential candidate John Edwards joining us tonight from Boston. Senator, many thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.